Welcome to the beginning of the Freehand series. During the course of this series of video tutorials, I hope to present to you everything you need to know about creating freehand designs, no matter how complex. So to begin with, let's start with the old adage, fail to prepare. Preparation is everything. When it comes to freehand designs, especially complex ones, I need to approach it with a plan. I'm not one of these people who can just simply dream something up and splat it onto the side of a vehicle and it works out perfectly. When it comes to things like the Leviathan you see in front of you, this was the culmination of around a month's worth of meticulous planning, researching, sketching, failing, because that is part of the process, trying something, it not working out, trying again and again and again to work it out, to bring it into a workable fashion. So when it comes to freehand design, the very first thing we need to keep in mind is that your first attempt may not look great. Accept that right here and now. This technique, it demands discipline, practice and patience. When you start to do weightlifting, you don't jump to the biggest dumbbell. You start small, you build yourself up gradually, and then when your muscles become stronger, that's when you can start to add more weight. Having said that, we are jumping straight in with some rather complex freehand tutorials, but if you have been following along with the tutorials so far, there would have been a gradual build-up in freehand design. If you would like to start smaller, if you'd like to start with the smallest dumbbell, I'd highly suggest going back through the back catalogue and having a look at the Howl of Yarrant series of tutorial videos. In there's a sample tutorial of how to do very basic freehand. Try that first before coming to this. Now, having warned you off this, having said all that, the aim of these tutorial series is to break down the process, so even something as complex as what you're seeing on the screen now can be broken down into simple geometric shapes, translated and built up. The aim of this series is to break down even the most complex of surfaces, even the most complex of freehand designs, to make them easily understandable, relatable, and give you a basis to build your own work from. To start the series, how about we look at a retrospective on a piece that I've done, Throne Cathasiel, the miniature you see in front of you. This is quite possibly my favourite freehand design that I've ever done. It is the most requested video tutorial. Unfortunately, this was created before the Patreon was even a twinkle in my eye. The entire process was done. It was painted well before I started videoing myself, unfortunately. But I can offer a retrospective on the basis, on the things I've done to build it up to this stage. Okay, so the inspiration behind this piece came from Dominion Zephon from the Master of Mankind. There's a offhand comment he makes in that how Barlight aesthetics, how the culture is akin to the late Holy Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire. Typing Byzantine angels into Google offers a whole wealth of wonderful research materials. We're just looking at a few sample images of the many different images that are available online. For the most part, we can start to detect trends in between these images. There's a strong emphasis on gold, on red, and on blues. We can see that the golds faded into like a beige colour. The angels, for the most part, have golden curled hair. We have rather unusual representations of seraphs. So if you read in the Bible the description of actual seraph, they are very unusual creatures. Creatures with 6 wings, multiple heads, the heads of eagles, oxen, man, hyenas. There's a whole treasure trove of different images we can pull, and it goes counter to what we traditionally think of angels. Especially angels that when we think of angel today, we rather think of like Christmas decorations, warm, forgiving, nurturing creatures. But angels are very rarely that, especially in biblical context. they tend to be either agents of wrath or revelation. And when the Almighty gives them a command, no matter how horrifying, they enact it. When we draw from this biblical inspiration, we can translate it over, well, we can make many connotations between those and the Space Marines. How their humanity is emptied out of them, replaced with this otherworldly gene seed, this otherworldly, almost the aspects of the divine, and no more so than the Blood Angels with their angelic Primarch, with Sanguinius. I can imagine that their humanity is just stripped from them, and their artistic attempts is a way of reconnecting with that humanity that they've had to sacrifice. I think in many ways that's where the trauma of the Black Rage comes from. That they don't know how to deal with this loss of personality, this loss of self. Emptied out, becoming something else, becoming a weapon, planed out to become a weapon. So their artistic expressions is a way to reconnect with some of that lost humanity, as well as drinking a bit of blood every now and again, reenacting the memories, drawing the memories of those they feed on. That could be another link to their lost humanity. Okay, so Byzantine art, very good place to start. And then it starts you thinking about these things, not maybe necessarily related to the pinpoint imagery that we want to create, but more the feelings that we want to evoke. Evoking feelings is far more prudent. It's far better to evoke a feeling than getting technical mastery. So you can see on the extreme close-ups that we've got of these ancient images, they aren't perfectly smoothed out, they aren't perfectly blended. There's a lot of damage to them, so when you've created your freehand, you will have to be brave, as I was with my Throne Cafeciel, of actually weathering on top of it. In order to do this, in order to create this design, let's whip over to it now. Let's have a look at the design. And here it is. I've circled the halos around the angel's head because that was my key, that was my way into creating this pattern on the Dreadnought. Now, this image was lifted off a piece of Byzantine art that I found that I felt would accurately fit into the gaps available on the Leviathan chassis. Now, I've seen lots of freehand designs that look like graffiti. Technically excellent, but they don't fit the scene. They don't fit in context with the machine. The ends overlap. The artwork just looks plastered on there with no context to it. It's completely... It doesn't look right. It looks like graffiti. With this, I was very keen that the images, the heads would correlate to the missile launchers embedded into the chassis itself. I wanted to make sure that it was in keeping with the context of the Blood Angels themselves, who I wanted to draw from a Byzantine line of imagery. So by having these circles and adding those onto the piece first, I was then able to build the rest of the scene around it. When looking at complex freehand design like this, it's very easy to become overwhelmed. We need to analyse the images, we need to strip the artistry from them and simply push them down into simple shapes. With this piece, the halos were my way in. If I was able to accurately add halos where I needed them to be, I can build the facial tones, the wings, everything else around it fits into place around those. So that was my way in. For the Ultramarine Dreadnought that we'll be looking at, 3 very different designs. There'll be the video tutorial series will concentrate on 1, the Tetrox of Ultramar. There will be a follow-up video with Kono and Uton later on, and the ones with the horses I will talk more about in detail with this either the first or the secondary PDF. I'm not quite sure just yet. This subject is so huge I can't condense it into one PDF, so this will be brought over two-parter PDF. All projects like this start with a mood sheet. Taking images from Google, taking them from anywhere you find them, putting them onto a single sheet. Again, I am not concerned about locating this in a very specific time period. This is a cross-generational artistic endeavour. The Ultramarines draw from Roman and Grecian military traditions. It seems like whenever this is brought up online, it devolves into an argument. Oh, this is Roman, or this is Grecian. It's not it's drawing from both, but it's really not either. They draw from the mix. It's cherry picked on the whim of the artist, on the whim of the Games Workshop studio. Strict adherence to one time period will lead to a very close representation of that culture at the time. But we aren't here to do any excavation. We aren't here to recreate. We're here to reinterpret. With this in mind, I've chosen three periods of Guilliman's life to display in the hulls of the Leviathan dreadnoughts. The first design honours his adopted mother and father, Kono and Newton, who shaped the outlook on humanity and good governance. Secondly, I have represented the triumphs of Illyrium and Thrace, the war horses, as well as the war horses Roma and Angelo that he rode into to conquer those city-states. And finally, the establishment of the Tetrarchy and ultimate rule over the kingdom of Ultramar. I almost feel like this is a triptych. It almost feels weird saying the ch sound, so I think it's a triptych. The trio of pieces all linked together, creating a whole, creating the story of Guilliman's life. That's what I was very keen to represent with these pieces, drawing upon the Roman and Grecian traditions.